Machines that once dominated the skies over Korea were suddenly disappearing in brutal combat. This is the complete record of every aircraft lost in the Korean War. We start our list with jet fighters and air superiority aircraft. North American F-86 Sabre. The United States lost around 250 of these frontline fighters between late 1950 and 1953. Most were destroyed in brutal air combat against MiG-15s over MiG Alley, while others fell victim to anti-aircraft fire and accidents. Next, Lockheed F-80 Shooting Star. The United States lost 368 of these early jet fighters during missions across Korea. Many were shot down by anti-aircraft guns during low-level attacks, while others were intercepted by enemy MiG-15 fighters during dangerous combat sorties. Republic F-84 Thunderjet. American forces lost roughly 335 of these fighter bombers throughout the war. Heavily used for escort and strike operations, they suffered constant losses to anti-aircraft fire, while several were destroyed in aerial combat against MiG-15 interceptors. Then, Grumman F-9F Panther. The United States Navy lost nearly 78 of these carrier-based jet fighters during combat operations. Most were brought down by anti-aircraft fire while attacking ground targets, though several also fell during dangerous encounters with MiG-15 fighters. Now this is the McDonnell F-2H Banshee. The United States Navy lost roughly 15 to 20 of these long-range jet fighters during strike and reconnaissance missions. Their deep operations over enemy territory frequently exposed them to concentrated anti-aircraft fire. The next one, Lockheed F-94 Starfire. American forces lost around 9 of these radar-equipped interceptors between 1951 and 1953. Often flying dangerous night patrols against enemy raiders, they faced anti-aircraft fire and occasional operational losses during missions. Douglas F-3D Skyknight. The United States Marine Corps lost around 5 of these all-weather night fighters late in the war. Used heavily during night interception missions, some were damaged by anti-aircraft fire, while others encountered enemy MiG fighters after dark. Finally in this chapter, Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-15. Soviet pilots admitted losing around 335 of these powerful jet fighters during the war. Most were destroyed in fierce aerial combat against F-86 Sabres, while others were lost to anti-aircraft fire and accidents. Next up, propeller fighters and ground attack aircraft. North American F-51 Mustang. The United States Air Force lost 474 of these propeller-driven fighters between 1950 and early 1953. Mostly flying dangerous close air support missions, they were repeatedly destroyed by anti-aircraft fire while attacking enemy troops and supply lines. Next, North American F-82 Twin Mustang. American forces lost around 8 of these long-range escort fighters during the war. Used for night patrol and bomber escort missions, several were damaged by anti-aircraft fire, while others disappeared during difficult operational missions. Then, Vought F-4U Corsair. The United States Navy lost 267 of these carrier-based attack aircraft during Korean operations. Flying low over dangerous front lines made them highly vulnerable to anti-aircraft fire, while only a handful were destroyed during air combat against MiG fighters. Now this is the Vought F-4U Corsair AU-1 variant. The United States Marine Corps lost around 227 of these heavily armed ground attack aircraft. Designed specifically for close support missions, most were destroyed by concentrated anti-aircraft fire near frontline positions. The next one, Hawker Sea Fury. British Royal Navy forces lost roughly 9 of these powerful carrier fighters during Korean operations. Frequently flying ground attack missions near enemy territory exposed them to anti-aircraft fire, although one famously managed to shoot down a MiG-15. Gloucester Meteor F-8. Australia lost 44 of these early jet fighters between 1951 and 1953. Initially used in air combat, they struggled against faster MiG-15s and later shifted toward ground attack missions, where anti-aircraft fire caused many additional losses. Next, North American F-51 Mustang of the Royal Australian Air Force. Australia lost 22 of these aircraft during dangerous low-level missions in Korea. Heavy anti-aircraft fire and occasional MiG interceptions caused repeated losses while supporting United Nations ground forces. Finally in this chapter, North American F-51 Mustang of the South African Air Force. South Africa lost roughly 34 of these fighters during close air support operations. Most disappeared while flying low over enemy positions, making them frequent targets for anti-aircraft weapons. Continuing with bombers and strike aircraft, Boeing B-29 Superfortress. The United States lost around 62 of these massive bombers between 1950 and 1953. Several were destroyed by MiG-15 fighters during deep bombing raids, while others were heavily damaged by anti-aircraft fire and later written off. Next, Douglas B-26 Invader. American forces lost roughly 212 of these night intruder bombers during Korean operations. Flying dangerous low-level missions against roads and railways repeatedly exposed them to radar-guided anti-aircraft fire, engine failures, and severe weather conditions. Then, Douglas AD Skyraider. The United States Navy lost around 60 of these carrier-based attack aircraft during strike missions. Often carrying massive bomb loads against enemy positions, they were repeatedly destroyed by anti-aircraft fire while flying close support operations. Now this is the Douglas AD Skyraider of the Marine Corps. The United States Marines lost nearly 45 of these powerful attack aircraft during frontline missions. Flying directly over dangerous combat zones made them constant targets for anti-aircraft guns and ground fire. The next one, Ilyushin Il-10 Beast. North Korea lost roughly 93 of these ground attack aircraft within only weeks of the war beginning. Many were destroyed during bombing raids on airfields, while others were intercepted and shot down by American jet fighters. Tupolev Tu-2 bomber. China admitted losing 4 of these medium bombers during combat operations. Used for bombing missions over contested territory, several were intercepted and destroyed by American F-86 Sabres before completing their assigned objectives. Next, Grumman F-7F Tiger Cat. The United States Marine Corps lost around 10 of these twin-engine night fighters between 1950 and 1952. Flying difficult night interdiction missions exposed them to anti-aircraft fire, poor visibility, and frequent operational dangers. Finally in this chapter, Gloucester Meteor F-8. Australia lost 44 of these jet fighters during both combat and strike missions. After struggling against MiG-15s in aerial combat, many later disappeared during low-level ground attack operations under heavy anti-aircraft fire. Continuing with reconnaissance and patrol aircraft. North American RB-45 Tornado. The United States lost around 3 of these jet reconnaissance aircraft during deep intelligence missions between 1950 and 1953. Flying far into hostile territory exposed them to MiG-15 interceptions and concentrated anti-aircraft fire. Next, Lockheed P-2V Neptune. The United States Navy lost around 4 to 6 of these maritime patrol aircraft during Korean operations. Used for mine-laying and overwater patrols, they frequently faced anti-aircraft fire and dangerous operational accidents near coastal areas. Then, Grumman HU-16 Albatross. American forces lost roughly 5 of these rescue flying boats throughout the war. Frequently searching for downed pilots near dangerous coastlines exposed them to anti-aircraft fire, rough weather, and repeated operational hazards. Now this is the Grumman AF-2 Guardian. The United States Navy lost around 5 of these anti-submarine aircraft during Korean service. Most disappeared due to mechanical failures and operational accidents, although a few reportedly suffered damage from coastal anti-aircraft fire. The next one, Fairey Firefly. British Royal Navy forces lost around 8 to 10 of these maritime strike aircraft during Korean operations. Flying repeated attack and reconnaissance missions exposed them to anti-aircraft fire while operating close to dangerous enemy coastlines. Supermarine Seafire FR-47. Britain lost roughly 9 of these carrier fighters during the opening months of the war. Some were destroyed by anti-aircraft fire during attacks, while others crashed during notoriously difficult carrier landings aboard Royal Navy ships. Finally in this chapter, Westland Dragonfly. British naval forces lost roughly 2 to 3 of these rescue helicopters during Korean operations. Mainly operating near carriers for search and rescue duties, most losses resulted from difficult operational accidents rather than enemy action. Next up, transport and utility aircraft. Douglas C-47 Skytrain. The United States lost around 15 of these transport aircraft during Korean operations between 1950 and 1953. Used for troop movement, supply delivery, and medical evacuation, they frequently faced anti-aircraft fire, rough weather, and dangerous landings. Next, Douglas C-54 Skymaster. American forces lost roughly 8 of these long-range transport aircraft throughout the war. Carrying troops and supplies across Korea exposed them to anti-aircraft fire, engine failures, and occasional surprise attacks on vulnerable airfields. Then Fairchild C-119 flying boxcar. The United States lost around 8 of these heavy transport aircraft during frontline missions. Frequently used for cargo drops and troop transport, they suffered losses from mechanical failures, anti-aircraft fire, and difficult operational conditions. Now this is the Douglas C-124 Globemaster II. The United States lost around 3 of these enormous heavy-lift aircraft during Korean service. Mechanical failures and dangerous operational accidents accounted for most losses while transporting critical military cargo across long distances. The next one, Antonov II Colt. North Korea lost roughly 8 to 10 of these slow utility biplanes during infiltration and supply missions. Often flying at night to avoid detection, several were intercepted by United Nations fighters and anti-aircraft defenses. Cessna L-19 Bird Dog. American forces lost over 20 of these light observation aircraft during Korean operations. Flying extremely low over front lines while spotting artillery targets made them highly vulnerable to small arms fire and anti-aircraft guns. Next, North American T-6 Texan Mosquito. The United States lost over 30 of these forward air control aircraft during the war. Used to mark enemy positions with smoke rockets, they frequently came under heavy fire while flying dangerously low missions. Finally in this chapter, North American T-6 Texan of the South Korean Air Force. South Korea lost around 12 of these aircraft during dangerous liaison and target marking missions. Several were destroyed during airfield attacks, while others fell to ground fire. Now let's look at helicopters and rescue aircraft. Sikorsky H-5. The United States lost around 15 of these rescue helicopters during Korean operations between 1950 and 1953. Frequently sent behind enemy lines to recover wounded troops and downed pilots, they faced anti-aircraft fire and mechanical failures. Next, Sikorsky H-19 Chickasaw. American forces lost roughly 12 of these transport helicopters throughout the war. Used heavily for troop transport and medical evacuation, most losses came from dangerous operational accidents rather than direct enemy fire. Then, Bell H-13 Sioux. The United States lost around 18 of these lightweight medical evacuation helicopters during Korean service. Frequently landing near active battlefields to evacuate wounded soldiers exposed them to anti-aircraft fire, harsh weather, and repeated operational risks. Now this is the Hiller OH-23 Raven. American forces lost roughly 12 of these observation helicopters during frontline operations. Used for reconnaissance and casualty evacuation missions, many disappeared after facing ground fire while operating at extremely low altitudes. The next one, Westland Sikorsky Dragonfly. British Royal Navy forces lost roughly 2 to 3 of these rescue helicopters during Korean operations. Mostly assigned to search and rescue duties near carriers, their losses mainly resulted from dangerous flying accidents. Sikorsky H-503 S-1 variant. United States Marine and naval crews lost several of these rescue helicopters during combat operations. Flying repeated recovery missions over hostile areas exposed them to anti-aircraft fire, while mechanical failures created additional dangers. Finally in this chapter, Grumman HU-16 Albatross rescue aircraft. American forces repeatedly relied on these flying boats to recover pilots near dangerous coastlines. Although only a few were lost, rescue missions frequently placed crews under anti-aircraft threat. Continuing with early communist aircraft. Yakovlev Yak-9P, North Korea lost roughly 79 of these piston-engine fighters during the opening weeks of the Korean War. American jets and bombing raids quickly overwhelmed them, while many aircraft were destroyed on airfields before even reaching combat. Next, Yakovlev Yak-11. North Korea lost around 12 of these trainer aircraft used in limited combat roles during early operations. Several were intercepted by American F-82 twin Mustangs and F-80 jets while attempting low-level combat and patrol missions. Then Polikarpov Po-2 biplane. North Korean and Chinese forces lost over 30 of these slow night harassment aircraft during the war. Their extremely low-speed complicated interceptions, although night fighters and anti-aircraft fire still managed to destroy many. Now this is the Yakovlev Yak-18 MAX. North Korea lost around 5 to 8 of these trainer aircraft while conducting nighttime harassment operations. Several were intercepted and destroyed by American night fighters during dangerous low-altitude flights over contested areas. The next one, Lavachkinla 11 Fang. Communist forces lost roughly 20 to 25 of these long-range piston fighters during combat operations. Used mainly for escort and patrol missions, several were intercepted and destroyed by faster American jet aircraft. Finally in this chapter, Lavachkinla 9 Fritz. Communist forces lost roughly 8 to 12 of these piston-engine fighters during the early war period. Entering combat against advanced American jets proved extremely difficult, leading to repeated aerial losses.